Reporting from Arkham Asylum, this is Gotham Rogues. In this video we spotlight Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow from the movie Batman Begins. It's another episode of Batman movie villains, and we're now at the Scarecrow, played by Cillian Murphy in Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins from 2005. In the movie, we meet Dr. Jonathan Crane, the sadistic and corrupt chief administrator of Arkham Asylum. Together with the ancient vigilante group, the League of Shadows, Crane has perfected a fear toxin, a drug that causes the victims to imagine their worst fears. The League plans to release this toxin on the entire city of Gotham in a scheme to destroy it, so that the city can be rebuilt in a better image. Crane doesn't know about this though, and simply believes that they're going to use the toxin to hold the city for ransom, the greedy bastard. It's up to Batman, played by Christian Bale, to stop Crane and the League's sinister scheme. Yeah, that's it for a plot synopsis. There's not really much to Murphy's Scarecrow. The thing about him is, he's really just there to service the story. He's a plot device. Someone had to create the fear toxin used for the big villain scheme in this movie, and they also needed a character to symbolize just how corrupt Gotham is. These are the two purposes that Crane serves, and the only reasons he's in the movie. But was there really any other way to do it? I mean, the whole point of Begins was to make a movie that for once focused on Batman and not the villains. With that in mind, I don't see how you could have fleshed out the Scarecrow more within the span of 2 hours. Anyways, what do I think of the little that we do get of the Scarecrow? His motivation for working together with the League is money. He thinks that they're going to hold the city for ransom, which of course they are not. So in this movie, Crane is simply motivated by greed. That is actually kind of faithful to the older comics, specifically stuff from the pre-Crisis era. Scarecrow was usually just in it for the cash, so Nolan's take does stay true to some of the source material. But over the years, the character did evolve and was given deeper and more interesting motivations, such as an obsession with advancing the science on the psychological effects of fear. That's my generally preferred take on the character, so it's boring that Nolan went with the version he did. They do hint that there is more to Crane though, like when he says, "I respect the mind's power over the body. It's why I do what I do." He's also portrayed as a pretty unhinged guy, who really seems to enjoy psychologically tormenting people. He does appear to be fascinated by the effects of fear on the mind, so it's not like he's a complete cardboard cutout of a villain who only cares about money and nothing else. After he's been sprayed by his own fear gas, he seems to go totally off his rocker and just revels in the panic-stricken chaos caused by the fear toxin engulfing the city. I feel like this is when we get the proper Scarecrow, like this is just the origin of the character, Scarecrow Begins. But of course the problem is, we didn't get any more after that. Well, besides the cameos in the 2 sequels, but that's not really enough. I would have loved to have seen more of this Scarecrow, the totally bonkers one. We get a glimpse of it in The Dark Knight, and I really liked what we saw. He started to sell his fear toxin as a drug on the streets, making deals with the mob. It's like he's still kind of thinking of making profits, yet at the same time just doing crazy shit. I mean, obviously he must have realized that this wasn't a very lucrative business choice. The fear toxin is a terrible drug that nobody would willingly use if they knew what it was. The only reason the mob seems to do business with him is because Batman has taken down all other drug suppliers in the city. I bet Crane finds this to be hilarious and views it as a fun experiment, spreading his toxin as a designer drug among junkies and partying teenagers. That really feels like something the crazier versions of Scarecrow would do. It's a pretty clever and creative plot for him as well. We've never really seen anything quite like that in the comics, though I could easily see it as a one-shot or maybe 2-parter, a typical smaller scale case. It's funny, despite that it's just a short cameo, I actually like what Nolan did with Crane in The Dark Knight more than in Begins. Like I said, this is when he's truly become the Scarecrow, at least that's how I view it. So, Cillian Murphy's performance. I'd say it kinda saves a character who otherwise would have been pretty boring. He makes it seem like there's actually more to the character than what there is in the script. Murphy just has this sinister, semi-psychotic, and kind of arrogant aura in this role. It's done in a real subtle way, but it certainly makes the character stand out a bit more. This is how you're supposed to play an unhinged, eccentric supervillain, and not like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee did it in Batman Forever. Subtle crazy, and not an over-the-top Looney Tune. It's just a shame that there isn't more to the character in the script. As for the visual design of Scarecrow, it's all really just a mask. Now I like the mask, it's a pretty good Scarecrow mask, but yeah, it is boring that he doesn't wear a costume. At the end of Begins, Crane does wear a tattered straitjacket that kind of serves as a Scarecrow costume. Again, like I said, this movie is basically the origin of the character, although in The Dark Knight, he's back to wearing just a regular business suit. I guess the straitjacket was really only intended as a nod to his costume in the comics. Considering the plot and tone of Begins, would it have made sense for him to walk around in a costume? No, absolutely not. I suppose we should feel lucky that he even wears a mask, as Nolan didn't even want that. It was David Goyer, the co-writer, who insisted that Crane at least wears the mask. As much as I love the Dark Knight Trilogy, Nolan can be really boring sometimes. Overall, the design for Murphy's Scarecrow is pretty meh. Not bad, but not terribly exciting either. The same goes for the fear toxin effects. For some reason, Nolan chose to do them really subtle and not in your face. I think in your face hallucinations of monstrous creatures would have been more fun, especially in live action. Psychological hallucinations are also great, like the affected person imagining some sort of scenario that isn't actually happening. But instead we got a bat here, some maggots there, and shaky movements. Kinda bland. I do absolutely love the bat monster that Crane himself hallucinates though. In conclusion, Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow is nothing more but an alright take on a character. It's not bad, but man, it could have been so much better. The Scarecrow has a lot more potential than this. I mean, he's basically just Ra's al Ghul's pawn here. That's actually pretty disrespectful to the character. I do sincerely hope that Crane is featured as the main villain in a future Batman movie, and fully decked out in a fabulous costume too. Next up on Batman movie villains, we'll be taking a look at Teen Boot's Victor Zsasz, yet again from Batman Begins. Nah, just kidding, he has like 30 seconds of screen time. If I'm going to say anything about him, it's that he's a fun little Easter egg for the fans, and that's all Nolan obviously intended with the character. Next up on Batman movie villains for real, we'll be taking a look at Heath Ledger's Joker from The Dark Knight, so stay tuned for that. And remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.